Welcome to Series 3 of Bass Talk with Hagen and Hayes. Today's episode is called Ask Me a Question. What's your first question, Susan?
Hi, David. It's great to see you again.
Hi, good to see you.
I'm so excited because we got a lot of questions, and I'm very enthusiastic about it. My first question is from Johnny, and it's what are some methods to keep you on track with practicing things consistently, like when you do exercises over and over again? I'm a big fan of setting small goals, achievable goals. Whether it's, by the end of this week, I want to make sure my second finger of my left hand isn't lifting off the string when it's not supposed to be. Or by next week, I want to add this new bowing to an exercise. But definitely one of the things that I really like is small goals. And every time people ask me questions about practicing and focusing on practicing, it has to do with achievable small goals. 10-minute goals is my big favorite thing.
I think that's a great idea. I really like that. I always teach my students that we're building a house or a skyscraper or something, and one brick at a time. And it's 10 minutes at a time, isn't it? It's quite a good way of doing it. So my first question is from May Halliburton in Scotland, and she says, what motivated you to start recital music, and how do you keep up such a fantastic momentum of new publications? I started recital music. Well, the interest came when I was still at school, and we started playing music from York Edition, and I saw that they were commissioning new music and publishing old music. Then I went to the Royal College of Music, and I just decided I wanted to have some of the same. I wanted to have a publishing company as well for double bass. Then I started commissioning. And in 1986, we started, just after I come back from Prague, studies with Franciszek Poczta. And it's been 38 years now. It's gone really, really quickly. Momentum of new publications. I put 10 new pieces, up to 10 new pieces on Double Bass HQ website each month. And that really focuses my mind about trying to get a balance between beginner music, intermediate, advanced, music for one bass, two bass, three bass, four bass. And I really enjoy putting the list together. It starts out earlier in the month and then it can change. So every month is different.
I've also noticed that you love projects, and whether it's a theme of somebody's birthday or something, that inspires a project is great. And you're really good with old and new, redoing some older pieces that may have been lost in the shuffle or that just maybe need a cleaner new edition, and reviving some old things for us as well as bringing new music, which I think is a wonderful balance. And I get excited about it. I can only imagine how excited you get.
I think they're both part of my passion. I love music from the past, which is why we're where we are. But I also like music of now and supporting composers. So to me, it's every piece is so exciting. I just love every month putting this new list together.
It's a great balance. I love that. Okay, I got a question from Simone Garcia in Spain, and he said, what has your professional friendship with David meant? You've discovered new repertoire thanks to him, and that is absolutely what's nice. Is I have a bass playing friend that I can talk bass things, but also a friend that I can talk life things. And David's wife Sarah is also a very dear friend. And I like to think that my husband Kevin is also a friend of theirs. So we have a really nice quartet of friends. But I love the professional side. We can talk, you and I could talk bass all day for days on end, really. But you have certainly have done. I love it. You've opened up a whole world of music that I never knew about, that I don't know if it never made it to America or just didn't make it to the little insulated Boston that I'm from. I think that a lot of the heritage of Czech bass, I never even knew. We've talked about this, that Samandel was Czechoslovakian. I always thought he was, Austrian or German, and it has to do with where he worked and all that. But you've opened my mind to Franciszek Poczta, whose sound is just like no one else's, and all of this repertoire, old and new. It's every day is new and exciting for me because of that, and that is thanks to you, as well as you encouraged me to actually write my book, the Basics of Bass warm-up book, and you helped me typeset the music and our podcast. I mean, it's almost an endless list, which is something my husband hates when people say, but it's, it's just an endless list of exciting new things in my life, thanks to my friendship with you.
Fantastic, thank you. Simon also sent me a question as well. Well, sent me four, like he sent you four. In your roles as performer, teacher, publisher, and composer, which one do you feel most comfortable with? And the answer to that one is usually whichever one I'm doing at the time. I'm always 200% with whatever I do. And there'll be times when I'm just a performer. There'll be times when I'm mainly a teacher, times when I'm composing. I enjoyed every one of them. I think, if I'm honest, the composing one came later in life, and that's my favorite. That's I'm so grateful to have this gift to be able to compose. Whether you like it or not, I love the process. Enjoy writing music. And that one, out of all the things I do, I think is my favorite. But I enjoy all of them equally. It's really, I think I don't do things half-heartedly like you don't. We go into this, everything is 200%. So thank you, Simon. Nice question.
I would imagine for you too, where the composing is a newer part of your life, that it just has that much more excitement because of that. I love that. I got a question from Sophie. I love this question. You and I have done a podcast on this before.
Sophie, my daughter.
Yes, she is.
She didn't ask me a question.
No, she sent it to me. She knew. I think she knew what this question was going to do. French or German bow, and why? I think this is a good one for each of us to answer. French bow for me is what I perform on, because when I started, I was learning German bow, and I had my dad was my first teacher, and then I went to a violin teacher who was, he was a music educator, so he knew enough about bass to get me started from where my dad wanted to stop. And then when I went to my very first, real, I call bassy bass teacher, she was a professional freelance bass player. She only played French bow, and she only would teach me if I switched to French. And I loved her as a teacher, and I just wanted to study with her so badly. I had no commitment to anything. I mean, I'd barely been playing for maybe a year and a half. And I said, well, sure, that's fine. So I switched to French, which actually benefited me. At the time that I went to college, Ed Barker, who was my teacher, would not teach you if you were a German bow player.
All right.
So I never would have gotten into his studio as a German bow player. So it worked really to my benefit, but I kept up my German bow chops behind the scenes. I am nothing like you are with it, but that's my own personal story. I feel like there's one bow hold for each person, and you try whatever kind of lands in your hand first. And if it's not comfortable, try the other, because it shouldn't be uncomfortable. It might be big or long or heavy or a little unwieldy at times, a bow and a bass, but it should not be uncomfortable. And so I never ask my students to switch unless they're having physical discomfort. And then I give them a week with the other hold to teach them how to do it, give them a week or two to try it, and then we reassess. But I never sort of boot them to another hold.
I started with French bow. I think I played for about 12 years. And then I went to Prague to study with František Pošta. And because he was German bow, he didn't make me change at all. It was my decision. But I thought I would learn more from him if I was using the same bow. So I changed over. And I've never gone back. I love the German bow. But I know great players who use French, great players who use German. So it's as you say, there's a right one for everybody. And I teach both bows. And if someone comes to me with a French bow and it's working well, we stick with it. There's no reason to change. If they're a beginner, I'll start with the German bow because that's the bow I prefer. But other than that, I think it's personal preference.
Yeah, I feel like there are sort of an equal number of pros and cons for each. And it's one of those funny things people, I think jokingly, they'll be like, my bow's better than yours. There are some people that I really think believe that strongly too. But I really, yeah, personal preference is the biggest thing. Sort of like standing and sitting.
Mm. I think I told you that the Bass Fest, we had a session and we had great players there, Thierry Barbet, brass, Jeff Baratic, Tapo, had the Howard, really great lineup. And we had a session and I called it Why the German Bow is Better Than the French. I just think, wow, that just annoys so many people. But it's the great thing is they're both great bows. They're both difficult bows.
Yeah. Yeah. And for years, the Boston Symphony was only, no, sorry, the Philadelphia Orchestra was only accepting French bow players
All right.
for many years. They just felt they wanted that sound. And for years, the Boston Symphony had fewer German bows than French bows. And now it's a pretty, I mean, they have an odd number of players, but it's much closer. It's four against five. I wouldn't be surprised with their auditions coming up in the next year or so if that changed to being, 6 or 7 German bow players. It's not about the bow. It's about how you play.
Fantastic. So the next question is from Lynn Hannings, a fantastic bow maker, friend to both of us. Have you ever had any bass-related injuries? How do you stay bass healthy? I thought, what a great question. And it's terrible, really, because I don't do anything. And I've never had any injuries. I've been playing the bass for, I don't know, nearly 50 years now. And I've never had any injuries. One of my adult students, I was playing some duets with him in a informal concert, and he had an Alexander technique teacher. And the teacher came along to the concert, and she must have said afterwards to Jim that everything I did was so relaxed. She was so surprised. So she could see why I have no problems. Because again, I say to my students, I'm 4 stone overweight. I'm the wrong side of 60. And I still haven't, touch wood, had any injuries. So I must be doing something right.
One thing that I know that you do, because we've talked about this, is something I do. I also have never had a bass-related injury, and I've been playing the bass for almost 40 years. You and I both warm up, and I really think that warming up, even just for a couple of minutes, makes a world of difference to people. I think that's why I'm passionate about warming up, is that it really, some people are very interested in stretching and all sorts of different things. I just think warming up is like a light, gentle stretching of our bass muscles. So warm-ups for me, I think, is why we stay uninjured, but I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, I just do a little bit of warming up. I just play through the technique exercises I use with my students, and that's enough. I enjoy that. But the technique exercises work really well, and I use the same ones, or hand shapes or scale based or something.
Yep, I say to my students, 5 minutes. That's all it takes is 5 minutes of warming up. You're going to be fine. And it's interesting because I'm just overtaking your question. I'm sorry. But the number of people that I know that get injured, every single one of them is someone who doesn't do a thoughtful warm up. And I don't know. And, one of my students, his mom is an Alexander technique teacher. And she said one of the things she loves about, my playing and my teaching is the lack of stress, and it looks very easy and comfortable. And she was hoping that I would teach that to her son, which I think I have. I work on that weekly. But yeah, I think that makes a world of difference to people. So, and I both have sort of warm up suggestions for people. You can check out our what is that sort of double bass plug.
Yeah, daily exercises by David Host. Well worth having.
So now I have a question. Shall I do another Simone question? Is it too soon? He sent some really good ones.
They're very good.
One for me is, how many premieres have you played? It's an awesome question because basically my solo playing, I'd sort of shelved it for a long time. I only learned in school the solos that you need for an audition, and never thought of fun artistic solo portion of my career until probably around 2018. And since then, I've really, really enjoyed it. I have premiered over 120 pieces, and Yeah, and almost 50 have been written for me or dedicated to
Mm.
me, which I feel ineffably just honored that people would write music for me or send me music. But I feel like in a short period of time, so that's a lot of premieres. And I love it. It's just, it feeds my soul. It really does. I love putting a new piece on my stand and just digging into it. And I sometimes feel, and I bet you feel this way, I feel it's kind of my duty. And not
Mm.
in a I'm forced to do this type of way, just it's my calling to get to premiere new music by people while I'm stammering because I get so excited about it.
I think I mentioned to you the junior bass ensemble when I taught at Wells Cathedral School. They're all young. About age 14 was the oldest one. And there's one particular year, I think we had about 8 bass concerts, which was absolutely amazing. And each one had a different theme. So there's one dedicated to Teppo's music. There's one for Bottesini. There was a Czech program. There was dedicated to Francio Posta. So there are lots of different things. And I think the youngsters premiered. They gave 8 world premieres that year. And I remember saying to one of the students, "This is another world premiere." And he said, "Oh, not another one, sir." And I just thought it was such a nice comment. And I always said, "Go and ask your cello playing friends how many world premieres they're given this year."
Right. And even worse, I think, is bass playing students
Mm.
hardly ever get to do that. I feel lucky that a handful of mine have gotten the opportunity to premiere music by you at Berkeley. And I remember the first concert of premieres they did with your
Mm.
Urzik. They were all very jittery and they're not jittery people. And they were like, oh my God, I feel this weight of responsibility and it's exciting, but it's pressure and I'm nervous. And by the second or third or maybe fourth time for some of them doing this sort of
Mm.
a concert where there's premieres in it, they're like, yeah, thank God for dude. We got these great premieres. This is awesome.
It's nice, isn't it? Because it just becomes normalized. And I really think that that is a nice thing. It's nothing special. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just something we do.
Right.
Mm.
Absolutely. I think that's great.
So my next question is from Alex Forbes. Alex was one of my students many, many years ago. We were friends, wow, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 years now. And he put here, if you could sit down for a glass of wine with Bottesini, what would you want to ask him? Wow, what a lovely question.
I love
Bottesini
that.
is one of my heroes. And what I'd like to ask him is how he worked out what the bass could do, how he changed how we play the bass, and suddenly the bass can sing, and he's using harmonics all over the bass, and he's using the from the low notes right up to the highest notes. How did he know that the bass could do that? Who inspired him? I'm presuming it's his teacher, Luigi Rossi, in Milan. But I don't know. I would also like to ask him. Um, did you realize that 150 years later, your music is still at the heart of the solo repertoire today? And I think he'd be so surprised. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I think so. Those are great questions. I think he inspired so many of us. I know the first time I heard his second concerto, think
Mm.
I cannot die until I've learned that piece. And now I've played it umpteen times. I've performed it with so much, just like you, with a bunch of different orchestras and different, string orchestra, full orchestra, that sort of thing. But every time I just think this is a beautiful piece. And I'll teach Bottesini to students, and they say, "Wow, this is amazing!" And the 50 years later, it still holds up to be completely beautiful. I love that.
The second double bass record I bought when I was about 17 or 18 was Ludwig Streicher playing Bottesini. So it's just Bottesini. And it blew my mind. I just couldn't believe that this man was playing all this amazing music. And it really changed my attitude. It's because I worked out he was human and not superhuman. So if he could do it, I could do it. And all you have to do is work out what the key is.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, I just absolutely love it. I'm in awe of Bottesini. The more I play and teach his music, the more I create new editions for recital music. I just think he was an absolute genius. And he traveled most of his working life until about the 6 months before he died, when he became director of the Conservatoire in Parma, a job he'd got thanks to his good friend Verdi.
Never
And
heard of him.
yes, he was quite famous. And but he traveled at a time when it was difficult to travel. It's amazing, isn't it? he was a world superstar.
Yes. That was, not like it is today. We're not
No,
hopping flights and checking on Instagram. His name, he was traveling and his name was getting around. It was much harder back then than it is now.
isn't that a nice question? I was
I love that.
seeing that one.
That's a fabulous question. Oh, I love that. Um, so I have a question from an Instagram friend who goes by initials, DDB. So I won't say his name in case he goes by initials just for his own privacy reasons. He has an excellent question of how do you approach a student that is recovering from surgery, and are there recommendations for teachers to consider? I feel like it's a very important question, and we may even hit it again. And I think we're going to have to do 2 episodes of this. I think it really depends on what the surgery is. I mean, heaven forbid, appendicitis. Okay, well, fine. We recover from the incision and the anesthesia and all that sort of stuff. Is it hands, arms, shoulders, back, something that you really need for the base? Or is it, I had a lump removed from my nose. Scary, could be skin cancer, but it's not going to impact my bass playing. So if it's not anything that's going to impact bass playing, just recover and you'll bounce back. If it has to do with any sort of skeletal or muscular portions of what we do to play the bass, I think there has to be full recovery time for more than just incisions and anesthesia. And then I think you have to ease in. It's also a very good time if, by any chance, any sort of injury or surgery is because of bass-related problems, like you had carpal tunnel or something like that, then you're not going to be able to go back to playing the way you did before because it already hurt you. So then you've got to regroup. And I kind of like, and I'm curious about what you would have to say about this, David. I like starting from scratch and saying, forget everything you knew, which is impossible to do, but let's try to override it at every chance. And let's reapproach the instrument. Let's find a better angle, a better height. Let's make sure you're using your left hand really easy but efficient. Let's make sure your bow hold is correct for your hand and your arm, that sort of fit. And I think that might be the most important thing, is if it is bass related, well, then we've got to regroup and lay new foundation. Knock down the old foundation, build in a new location and everything. What do you think?
Exactly. I think slow and steady. I think any injury, there are problems there. And if you come back to it too soon, if you try and go back to normal, you can do more harm than good. With all my students, if they have a hand injury, it could be from football or rugby or cricket or whatever, and I just say, well, just stop playing. Just stop playing. And at some point, the hand will heal. Make sure you bring the doctors or the nurse and check that there are no problems, but just stop playing. Let the hand or fingers heal, your arm heal, whatever it is. If you broke your arm, you would let it heal.
Right.
You wouldn't keep playing.
No.
So if you injure your hand or your fingers, it's the same process. The fact you haven't got a cast on there or splint or anything doesn't mean it isn't serious.
Exactly.
And I've many times with students, with then, there might be a left hand injury, in which case we spent a whole lesson just doing bowing.
Sure, there's plenty of
There
time.
are often ways to do this. Sometimes we do music theory. There are many ways of still learning,
Right.
but just allowing everything has to heal. And if you come back to it too soon, it might be okay now. You're storing up problems for later, I think.
Right.
So I think slow and steady for me is the key.
I always say to my students, I want you to decide when to retire. I don't want your body to tell you it's shutting down and you have to stop forever. I want you to make that call. And I am a little bit of what I call a scaredy cat. And I'll tell my students, go to the doctor, insist on x-rays or CAT scans or MRIs or whatever you need, and let them get to the bottom of it, because, you may have just fallen walking down the sidewalk. You braced your fall with your left hand, and now it's sore. Well, let's just make sure that sore is just a pulled muscle that'll heal in a couple days and not a pulled or torn something. And I say, we'll do bow stuff today. And vice versa. I'm like, hey, we can do no bow. We can do left hand if you feel comfortable with pizzicato. We can do work. We can do theory. We can do ear training. There's always things that you can learn. But yeah, when you push your body too hard, too fast, things come back to haunt you. And I think patience is not just a virtue. I think it's really, really, it's called a virtue because it's so hard.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, but I always think of the bigger picture. And I think part for me is something I've been quite open in the past few years talking about is that I had major spine surgery when I was a teenager. I mean, I literally was bedridden for months. And did I want to get up and play my bass? You bet. But I learned an entire movement of a concerto from a hospital bed. Was it fun? Well, I mean, yeah, I couldn't hear any out of tune notes, so that was fun. Was it the same as playing the bass? No, but I listened to recordings. I studied the music. I figured out what fingerings I would want to do. There's work that you can do, even if you're not physically practicing the instrument. But I really think that having the patience to take the time to heal is the most important part of the healing process. Otherwise, it happens again, and that's even more disappointing. So I'm glad that we're like-minded. I believe I know who this person is, and they're a person that just wants to jump right back in because they're so enthusiastic and they love it so much, and I get that. But you've got to temper that a little bit and think of long term.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So my next question is from Tom Mahoney, who's one of my ex-students. He's now studying in London. Great player, great person. And Tom says, what is your favorite musical memory or performance? And that's really easy. In 2014, I was invited to play and teach in Prague Conservatoire, which is where my teacher, Franciszek Poczta, taught. And I was invited by Jerzy Valenta, who teaches there, studied with Poczta, and was also a bass player of the Czech Phil. And in 2014, Poczta would have been 95. So we did a series of concerts and workshops, and then Jerzy came over to England, and we played all Czech repertoire, which was mainly really fantastic. I loved it, and I met František Pissinger, and he was a cellist. He used to be the cellist in the Dvořák quartet, famous Czech quartet, and he knew my teacher, and he'd recorded with him. They recorded the Dvořák string quintet, and I met him afterwards. He's quite old by then. And he was just so complimentary, so wonderful. And he said, I loved your playing, and you reminded me of Poczta. And I thought, wow, I would happily die now and go to heaven. It was the one of the greatest weeks of my life, if I'm honest. I absolutely love that week. So that one has stayed with me. Of all the concerts I've done, everything I've done, that one especially, because it's all my loves came together.
I love that. That is great. Damon, I think this is as many questions as we can fit in one session. So we're going to have to do another episode.
That's fantastic. I've got so many more, so many fantastic friends have sent really nice questions in from around the world, including one from Iran, which is quite amazing.
Amazing. Oh, I love that. I just think this is wonderful. I'm so excited. And I want to thank everybody for listening to season 3 of Bass Talk with Hagen and Hayes. This is our first episode of Ask Me a Question. We'll be doing more. Like and subscribe. And I want to thank you for our season sponsors this year of Leatherwood Rosin and GraceGalleryDesign.net. I can't wait to do the next session. Thank you for this, David, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll hear you and talk to you in the next session. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Bye.